Thank you, Lynn. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you and to see all your lovely faces and names and just this energy of people gathering together in support of one another and really in support of life, what we call life potency or vibrancy, coming together to meet in this way. And Lynn gave me quite a lead in here. Yes, the work I do I'm quite passionate about it. I'm happy to come back and tell you more about it another time. Today, I thought I would start with the very beginnings of how in the work that I do, we start to meet one another. But I thought maybe we would do a little settling first, a little attunement. And does that sound right, Lynn?
Yes, absolutely.
And then during the attunement, I'm going to bring in a little bit of the principles of our work as we attune together. So finding a nice seated position, really feeling your ground. And I love this idea of coming into present time awareness by taking a seat inside yourself. Imagine walking towards yourself, leaving everything behind that brought you to this moment, if you can. And just taking a seat inside your physical body. In the busyness of our worlds, we become quite disembodied at times, and certainly focusing is a way that brings us back in. But in my work, we talk about the physical body, really feeling the wholeness of it and sensations that live within. We start by noticing what's there, perhaps feeling the weightiness of your body on the chair, your back against the chair, any sensations that you might notice, just saying hello to them and noticing. We start to settle a little bit with a sense of being here now and welcoming all that's there. And as we start to settle, we may come to our breath. And sometimes we find a place that feels settled in our body, perhaps the weight of our seat on the chair. And we call that a resource, a place where we can come back to that feels neutral or easeful or settled. And within my work, we talk about a midline, this central channel through the body that actually is a part of embryological development. It's also a quantum midline. That's this midline that connects us to the earth and the sky and moves through our center core. So we talk about this midline that we can come back to, which is quite grounding, quite primal, quite enlivened. So within this midline, we have this physical body that brings us through this life. But in my work, we also talk about a fluid body. This body of fluid that surrounds us up to 20 to 24 inches around our whole body. And when we were developing, we lived in a fluid body. And we were embryologically evolving. We had this fluid body with us, and it actually energetically continues to hold us throughout our life, throughout our lifetime. And it's a fluid body that we can lean into that gives us a sense of wholeness, full body movement, that extends beyond the physical. And see if you can just imagine a fluid body, this bubble of fluid all the way around that extends a couple of feet beyond, above, below, to the sides and back of your body. It's something that can carry you and support. And as you tune into that fluid body, keep your physical body and your midline present. Seeing if you can feel all of it at once. And then we talk about fulcrums in my work, finding a fulcrum along that midline. People sometimes find it in the pelvis, the heart, the third eye, the belly. Fulcrum is a place that we move from. I like to settle in my heart. Someone else might like to settle in their third eye. But it's a place to come back to and move from. See if you can find a fulcrum along that midline. And if that midline kind of doesn't present itself to you at this moment, just imagine that it's there. It can be a shaft of light, kind of like a rope or like a tree trunk, whatever image comes. And as you slowly come from that fulcrum, just bring your attention outside of your physical body, outside of your fluid body, to connect with a greater field, which is all of us together this morning at once. And as you do that, you can start to open your eyes and look around at these lovely faces that are here. You might like to do a little stretch. So welcome, everyone. It's good to be here with you this morning. So I have a little PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to just go over with you, because I have a little exercise that I think you might find to be really interesting and fun. So we'll get a chance to do that at about a little after 9. Okay, and I'll do a demo of it first. But first I'll go through a little PowerPoint, if that's okay, unless anyone has any questions before we start. Okay, so in our work, in the biodynamic craniosacral field, we talk about the ritual of contact and the relational field, how we come into contact with one another. And I know for all of you who are focusers, that is a part of how you move towards this greater depth of listening to another human who needs to be heard. It's such a beautiful place to be, isn't it, when we can truly deepen and listen to another. So in focusing, we're really settling in ourselves and listening to the other and reflecting back and taking in what they're saying. And in my work, we do the same thing, but there's this other really interesting aspect to it. And that is how we hold ourselves physically, not just in the way I just mentioned, but also in our attention, how we hold our attention around our listening. And perhaps in focusing, that sounds familiar to you as well. But the way we do it in our work is we actually bring in this idea of this field around us. So let's talk about that for a moment. Let's see, I'm trying to advance this, Christine. It doesn't seem to, oh, there it goes. So in every situation, our nervous systems meet one another. And we know this Many of you are familiar with polyvagal theory, with the autonomic nervous system, but it's like these two nervous systems meeting one another. Even when we want to listen to someone, there's this way that our nervous systems are meeting one another. And many of you know about this relational field, co-regulation, social engagement behaviors. Thank you, Stephen Porges, who brought us polyvagal. And the co-regulation is really how we help to regulate one another. And many of you are practitioners, therapists. We know the more settled we are in ourselves, the more that helps our client to settle as well. And some of the things that we use for co-regulation are our facial expressions, gestures, prosody, the way we speak, vocalizations. In my work, we call it no name meeting no name, actually dropping below our titles of client, practitioner, etc., to this being place. And we hold this wide perceptual field. We ground ourselves like we did in the meditation of presence. And in my work, we really talk about the heart-centered being state, which is a state of presence, a state of knowing. And it's actually called the nature of chitta. And chitta is a freeing of the mind. It's letting go of the mind state where there's this inherent luminosity. And there's this story of the Buddha who has about 500 students in front of him. And in his teachings, some of these students are realized or they meet some sort of enlightenment. And the Buddha, when he sees that some of these students have become enlightened, he doesn't say, oh, John or Lynn or Mary is enlightened. He says, chitta is free. So that freeing of the mind that brings us to this more knowing, luminous state that is not obscured by life conditions and these self-system formations. So when we are coming back to that heart-centered being state, we're orienting to these incredible primary forces of life and the stillness from which it arises. And I'm sure many of you have experienced when you're truly deeply listening to someone, there's this stillness between the both of you. There's this intelligence or knowing that brings the conversation forward when you're not in your mind thinking about what to say or how to reflect. The words come when you're in this really present state. And in our work, we talk about coherence. And here we have this incoherent heart rate and this coherent heart rate. And it's not the number of beats per minute, but it's actually the space between the beats that lets us know whether we are coherent or not. And here's this lovely little study they did of a boy and his dog. And here's Mabel, the dog. Here's Josh, the boy. And Josh and Mabel are in separate rooms, and you can see how incoherent their heart rates are. And then when Josh enters the room and loves Mabel, both of their hearts become very coherent here. When they leave, Mabel wants Josh to stay, and it looks like Josh wants to stay too. And there's this incoherence again, which is so powerful when we think about the way that we meet one another in this realm. And I love these words of Rumi, that, when we're focusing, there are words, and yet we still rely on a more ancient form of communication, emotional expression, right? We can really read not just from people's faces, but we get a sense of the field between us. In my work, we look at exactly what we did in the meditation. We have the physical body, the fluid body around it, We have this midline that we orient to. We have the ground of stillness, which from in my work, all things arise. And then we have something called the tidal body, which is this universal holding field, which I had mentioned, when we start to tune outside of the physical body to what's even further beyond and around us. So in our listening, we're really entering a sacred space, okay? And this is, as we know from focusing, a very mysterious place to enter, okay? And we talk about it being healing, and it's a mysterious inner presence where the breath of life resides. And we also talk about something called the inherent treatment plan. And it's this plan that is already inside each of us that knows this inner health and well-being. And it's there and ready for healing to unfold. And we know that in focusing and listening, we can feel that part of that inherent treatment plan, that movement forward towards health, which is this unfolding, isn't it? So how do we generate this healing space? We do it by stability, consistency, inner stillness, and this allows conditions of healing to arise, right? And we talk very much about the relational field, creating a space for healing that has safety, presence, and pacing, allows the client to remain in a being state, to drop down underneath all of the conditions that are holding them. And it really supports issues of safety and intimacy. So there's a wisdom by having a ritual in the way that we do this, a step-by-step way of coming into this relational field so that settling and deepening and optimal conditions will arise. So let's talk about the ritual of contact. And here are these two beautiful children who you can see how they're really meeting one another and feeling one another's presence in such a beautiful way, even though they're not facing one another. They're really in tune. So the first step is resourcing, sitting in chairs and finding out what's supporting our clients in the moment. And actually what's supporting ourselves as well. And exploring how they're feeling in themselves. The second step is really checking in with yourself and appreciating your own inner space as the listener or the practitioner, and asking, what's in the way of my being present just now? Sort of moving that to the side. And Christine, I'm just checking in about time. How am I doing here?
Really well.
Okay. Do I have another 5-7 minutes to continue?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, asking what's in the way of my being here just now. And then we established these practitioner fulcrums, which I had gone through a little bit in the meditation, coming midline, oriented to the sense of this fluid body around us, and shifting from more of a title of practitioner into the state of being. And then finding a fulcrum sometimes in our heart where we're radiating out, okay, and meeting another person's heart field. And I think most of you probably know about heart math and how there's an electromagnetic field around the heart, and our electromagnetic fields resonate with one another. And there's something that when we come from this heart field, there's this sense of unconditional acceptance for that other being that goes beyond conditions and personalities, okay, and ego states. And we're able to come into this receptive awareness, okay, and really take the other person in. And can I deepen into this being to being interconnection? So one of the things we're going to practice today is this moving towards. Once we're in our practitioner fulcrums or midline and coming from our hearts, how do we start to manage or understand both physically and with our attention how to meet that client that is in front of us? How do I consciously connect with their field? So something we do in my work is we negotiate that physical and attentional distance. And this is a really fun and interesting exercise to do. How can I truly meet the person I'm going to listen to in a way that's meeting not just them and hearing and listening, but meeting their physical and fluid boundary and where they are in themselves in a way
That's
that
fascinating.
can really help them start to settle in themselves. So resourcing helps, all of this helps clients to feel oriented, to feel balanced, and the practitioner too, to feel client-centered. And this supports clients to know there's a place of possibility where they can return to slowly over time to a deeper sense of self. So it gives them this sense of really being able to connect with their deeper selves and present who they are. And in time, little by little, they can return to their true self with healing. And I love this quote by Mary Oliver, Instructions for Living a Life. Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. And then this gorgeous quote by Nick Thut Han, go back and take care of yourself. Your body needs you. Your feelings need you. Your perceptions need you. Your suffering needs you to acknowledge it. Go home and be there for all these things. Namaste. Thank you very much.